designed this course specifically for beginners, and so a lot of people come to this conference. Last time I came a couple of years ago, there were people saying, well, I want to get into game programming, where do I start? And you know, the discussion 2 years ago was, should I do it in Unity, should I do it in
Assembly?
I wrote in assembly when I was his age, and I wouldn't do it ever again. So.
Q-Basic.
But
what about HTML5?
HTML5 actually a great place. If you want to learn HTML5 is good. My website's all
Scantron cards.
So, but if you're here, if you're a beginner, you've never done programming before, can you guys hear me okay? Am I projecting okay?
No, not loud enough. No, we'll just go for
it. So this is game programming for the absolute beginner. BibleByte and Kidware Software, the sponsors. I own both companies, so I'm sponsoring both of these.
This isn't a biased talk at all.
Not at all. In fact, if I get you programming, I don't care how you learn it. I want to tell you my story, how I got into programming. I look older than I really am, so I'll just say I'm over 50. So in 1974, when I was not that gentleman, but there was another young gentleman here, he's 9 years old. I was about that age. So in 1974, I happened to go to the Calbit Science Center in Oakland, California. Anybody been there? It's kind of like our Pacific Science Center. They have it's really cool stuff. But back then they had a PDP-10. Anybody know what a PDP-10, PDP-11 is?
Nope.
They were called mini computers. So there was no microcomputers. You couldn't put them in your house. You had to go to the Science Center. You had to go to the college or business or whatever. And you ran them on IBMs or DEC or digital at that time. And so there was this PDP-1110 or PDP-10, and they had BASIC running. And they had this little terminal. You can see it here on the side here. It's a paper-based terminal, so it's like a typewriter, and it goes chugga 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 chugga. And so you wait for each line to print off as you're programming it. Now, of course, they got into CRT models, so you see the CRT version right there. That was the first experience I had to looking at a game and playing it. And the game I played was called Lunar Lander, and you were landing a lunar lander module on the moon. You had to calculate, distance from the moon, how much fuel you wanted to give it, and if you didn't give enough fuel, you'd crash it. So that was my first experience. Back in those days, there were no computer programming books, except for, in 1973, a gentleman named David All worked at Digital Equipment Corporation, published this book called Basic Computer Games. And he took all the games that people had submitted that were part of this user group, the education user group for digital, and he put it all into this book format. And so then they sold it, and every time you get a Digital Equipment Corporation box, you would get this programming, all the programs in it, and you could write your own games. They re-released it in 1978 for microcomputers, so the microcomputer revolution started. Some of you might have been a part of it. Some of you, I see some gray hair, might remember that. There's some shaking heads. 2010, David All's a great guy, he's a Christian guy, got his permission to re-release the book using Microsoft Small Basic. So you can play all those classic games like Star Trek and Lunar Lander, and you can do it all just like you did back in the old days. Any of you recognize these computers, you older folks? Yes? Okay. Let's see if you can identify it. Let's go on the top left. TRS-80 color computer. Came out in 1980. One on the right. TI-99. Very good. Bottom on the left. It's a giveaway. Commodore PET. Yes, before Commodore 64, before all those big 20s. The guys from the UK, recognize the one in the middle. Timex Sinclair. Sinclair. Oh, we call it. You don't get the Sinclair. And then the bottom right. Some of you remember that one? Radio Shack Model 1, 1977. These were 8-bit computers. This is what I learned on. So I actually own this one right here. This is mine up here. I took all those programs that he had developed, by the way, and I started putting them onto a color computer, and then I started selling those things. By the time I was 17 years old, I did an internship at the King County, I guess it'd be school system at that time, and worked on an HP 1000, which also had BASIC. So I enjoyed it so much, had so much fun, that the gentleman said, hey, you're doing such a good job, I'm going to go work in another office, you just take care of this computer for me. So I had a lot of spare time on my hands as I'm sitting there looking at the computer, and I said, what am I going to do? So I built a gaming system on it, and then it had 10 modems attached to it that teachers would dial up to school districts, and I thought, yeah, it'd be kind of cool if I just advertised it in the local BBS magazines. Anybody know what a BBS system is?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bulletin board system before the internet.
I ran one of those.
Yes, yeah, Wildcat, PC board, all those. Yep. This was a mini computer running on it, and I built a game system on it. So I got in a little trouble afterward, but I actually had a lot of fun.
It was worth it, right?
In 1982, my dad, who was a pastor, challenged me. He said, "Son, you're playing a lot of games. You're spending a lot of time doing stuff on this computer. Why don't you write some fun computer Bible games?" So I was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't have a degree in theology." And he goes, "I do." So, so in 1982, we wrote the first computer Bible games. Computer Bible games released at that time. There wasn't any Christian software. There was no Christian software industry. There was no one out there. I was smiled when I saw that the developers were out there didn't ever talk to each other. We didn't even know they existed. And so there's one other guy who was doing Christian software who was on the other side of the country, and back in those days there was no internet, no email, so we didn't even get to know them until years later. So we released a whole bunch: Lost Coin Adventure, Daniel the Lion's Den, Elijah and the Ravens, Noah's Ark. They sold in Christian bookstores. Back then, that was before they had, online, Amazon.com. We did software distribution with cassette tapes. How many of you old enough to have done cassette tapes? Yeah, at least half a dozen of you. So these were, this is the entire series of 36 different programs. At that time, they were learning games. And if you broke a cassette tape, guess what? You had to get another one. Or if someone was making a joke, what's a pencil and a cassette have to do with each other? You stick the pencil in there and stretch it out when it got all wrapped around the head. It was no fun in those days. 100 games later, we did everything. Most of our games were developed for schools, and they were used for learning. So we had math programs, geography programs, typing programs. We had crossword puzzles, Lunar Lander, obviously, logic games, Sudoku. We did things like how to calculate home mortgages. You named the game, we did it. We even did tic-tac-toe. See, yep, there it is. You might even recognize on the bottom, you see Leapfrog out there. It sounds a lot like Frogger. Yes. So Leapfrog, so hundreds of games and apps. And then there was a time where we got approached of writing a book. And I somehow skipped that page, but it's not there. But we published a book in 1983, Computer Bible Games, and we taught children how to program. And this is the book right here. And so it was used in Christian schools across the United States. At that time, there was some homeschooling, so some homeschoolers used it. So this is TRS-80, TI-99. The second book we came back out with a year later was AppleSoft. Remember Apple IIs? So we did AppleSoft, Commodore Basic, and then this thing called Microsoft MBasic. Nobody knew what it was, but precursor to what was later known as GW Basic, Basic A, became Quick Basic, Q Basic, and now Visual Basic. And so of course we continued developing that curriculum, and now that we're 32 years later, our software, we distributed via shareware for a lot of years, and so this is download.com. I put this up yesterday, went out and take a look. I haven't looked lately. We're over 1 million downloads. Just our Visual Basic, Learn Visual Basic 6 tutorials have been downloaded 475,000 times since 2006. So a lot of people are learning computer programming this way. Praise goes to God that it continues to be successful. I don't know why anybody wants to learn Visual Basic 6 now, but I just looked in there. 386 downloads last week for Visual Basic 6. So we've got Visual Basic.net. We've got, don't ask me why, but they still download it.
It's really popular still.
It's still popular. I mentioned earlier our first book was published in 1984. It used to be Accent Publishing, became David Cook. They acquired them in 1992. One thing I learned through this journey with my dad has long since passed away, but we learned that all the publishers were making the money and we weren't. So my dad got frustrated. We spent a lot of work on just these 2 books alone, and not much money was made off of it from us. Other people made money off of it. So I told my dad, he wanted to quit, and I said, how about I learned how to do this publishing ourselves, and we figure out how to do publishing, and then we can publish our own books. He was keen on that, but for him, he was getting older, and he was like, I don't want to learn something new. Microsoft was taking over the world with Microsoft DOS. Remember DOS? Anybody use DOS? Yep. That's DOS. Some of you younger ones might even have started. That may be nostalgic for you. So Microsoft DOS was taken off. So I ended up trying to figure out how to publish electronic and paper myself. And so now we are, many years later, we have 4 popular programming languages that we now have books in. You can see our table over here. We do Microsoft Small Basic. Some of you are like, what's Small Basic? Small Basic was developed by Microsoft for kids. So if you are 10 or above, it's the perfect language for you. And I'm going to do a little demonstration of it. It's a very simple environment. It's .NET, obviously. It's got 14 commands and 2 operators, so everything you do in it, it's just like running it in Visual Basic. You just don't have the complication of Visual Studio. So middle school students can't kill themselves. There's no debug. There's all the stuff that you would get lost in Visual Studio, you won't get lost in Small Basic. But the nice thing is, I'll show it to you, you'll be able to graduate and turn your code into Visual Basic. We also do Visual C#. For those of you who do Unity, I know how important Visual C#. How many of you use Visual C#, you adults in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, about half a dozen or more. How do you like Visual C#? All thumbs up, yep. Great environment to work in. So we do Visual C# and then Java. I don't know if you know it, but the advanced placement exam for computer science is Java. So you have to learn Java. So it's become very popular in the academic world. So we have a curriculum for Java. Developed it back in about 2002. And if you want to go into college and you want to do advanced placement for you younger folks, you want to learn Java. So we have a Java curriculum too. We use the same programs through all our curriculum. So if you learn it in Small Basic, it's the same as in Visual Basic, C#, Java. You just learn the differences, the nuances in the code. We also have advanced books that these were here. My co-author Lou Tai Lee, who gets a lot more credit than I give him publicly, but I'd love to give him public credit. He's a great guy, great developer, great teacher. Taught at the University of Washington for 15 years. Taught this curriculum at the University of Washington. He has long since retired, and he's enjoying being retired. But a great guy. I do miss working with him. Our curriculum can be found on Barnes & Noble. You can go out to Barnes & Noble. We figured out all the distribution models, so you can buy our stuff off Barnes & Noble. You can also get it off Amazon. If you've got Amazon Prime, you can get it in 2 days. So I was just checking Amazon, how well we're doing. I don't know how many know this. There's 8-9 million books on Amazon.com. If you're an author, you can actually get visibility of how well you're doing against others. We continue to grow. Right now, I got to put on my glasses, read this. So they rank the number, how many books you've done by author, and right now I'm at out of, I don't know, I think there's 3 or 4 million authors out there. We're 93,000 right now and growing. So that's really nice. We just started with Amazon about 3 years ago. So it's been, it's actually, we have more business on Amazon than any of our other distribution points now. So.
Awesome.
And if you're curious about how that works, come talk to me afterward. I don't mind sharing anything I've learned. So I will tell you how we do software distribution. I'll tell you how we do Amazon, Barnes, Noble, etc. So for those of you who've never done computer programming, you younger folks, of course, you know, you love playing games, but why should you learn computer programming? Well, I want you to learn from my mistake. When I was in high school, I graduated high school, you know, I thought I was going to take over the world. I came out in 1982 just writing games and having fun and stuff, but within a couple of years I quickly realized there was so much I did not know, especially in the world of computer science. I was a self-taught programmer, but there's a lot I didn't understand about structured programming, a whole bunch of stuff that I just did not know. And so I went back to college after about 2 years, went to community college, took a couple of 3 years to do that, 4 years to do that. Then I went on and finished up my bachelor's in computer information systems. It took me 9 years to do that. I would do it all over again. It was worth the 9 years. The reason why is computer science is one of the top paying college programs right now coming out of college. A lot of folks don't realize it, but computer programming jobs are growing 2 times the national average. We're in a recession right now. There are 20,000 open computer programming jobs. For those of you who hire computer programmers, you know how hard it is to find good, skilled people. Very hard. They're shaking heads. It's very difficult. I have some openings that have been open a long time because it's hard to find really good, skilled people. And computer programming is fun and creative. Most of you who do that know that. So what I want to do is kind of paint a picture for dads. There's no moms in another session right now, but I want to paint a picture for the dads and sons in here. There are going to be 1 million more jobs and students by 2020. And that's not my statistic, this is coming from Conrod. So basically there's going to be 1.4 million computing jobs, and there's only going to be 400,000 computer science students to fill those. That's scary, actually. Of the jobs that are out there, 60% right now are computing jobs. 40% require math and other sciences. Students coming out of college right now, 98% are studying math and sciences. Only 2% are specialized in computer science. So you can see there's this big, huge gap that's getting bigger and bigger, and there's no one to fill it. Here's part of the problem. 2012 high school advanced placement enrollment. If you look at these numbers, over 1 million students, this is College Board numbers, over 1 million students got advanced placement in history. How many history jobs are out there? Okay, how about English? Okay, 800,000 English. Science getting better, math better, foreign language, economics, art, and music. Computer science, only 0.7% of students are enrolling in computer science. So we're not even creating the next generation. We're not creating the pool of students or assets or resources that are going to fill that pipeline. So since 9 out of 10 schools don't even offer computer programming classes, how many of you went in high school they had computer programming? At least basic, you know? Yeah? Today, it's very rare to find that. 9 out of 10 schools don't offer computer programming. It kind of just died out. And so there's this big, huge need. So I'm going to show a quick video, and then I'm going to go into a demonstration here. So, I want to do a quick games and demo applications. One of the things we did when we did our books, we took probably about 3 dozen of our games that we did for over the years and decided to open up all the source code. Applications like our Visual C# and Visual Basic and databases, that's our actually order management system that we created. So we opened that up and explained how we developed it, teach you how to do inner joins, outer joins, how to use everything from Access, if you want to do it in Access, a cheap version, or you can use a SQL Server development environment for that. And with our books, we also include DreamSpark. So if you're a student, you can get DreamSpark, and so we provide you that code for DreamSpark, which gives you access to all the professional languages and all the professional development environments that Microsoft provides, complements of Microsoft. So as I was mentioning, in addition to the game, I'll show you some of our apps that we've written that we will show off. And I'm going to show it to you in several different environments. I probably won't have enough time to go into all of them. This is kind of an eye test for some of you in the back here. So the first environment up here is JCreator. It's a great environment for students up. Someone's used JCreator. It's a great environment for Java, doing Java development. Been using it for years and love it. It's very simple and easy to understand for a typical middle school, high school student, and adults use it too. It's a great environment for that. Developed by a gentleman out of the Netherlands. And I'll also show off Visual Studio. I've got 2013 that's up on this computer here. And then Microsoft Small Basic, I want to make sure that some of the younger students in here get a view of that. Some parents who also do programming who know Visual Studio, you get an opportunity to see what it looks like in Small Basic. And most of you, how many of you use Unity today? Okay, I'll skip the Unity demo. So that's not me. I don't know what that was. So I've got the Jetsons right here. There you go. Okay, so let me go into that real quick. So how many of you have used Visual Studio? Visual Studio, so half a dozen of you. So as I said earlier, this is a class for beginners. It's an introductory. So for those of you who are sitting back there going, Phil, this is really slow. Now, think about it. You're going to have students, people come to you all the time and say, hey, how'd you learn programming? And you're like, wow, I can write code, but I don't know how to explain it. I'm not sure I can teach someone how to do programming. All of our tutorials are self-study, so you hand it to them and you become a hero. And they just ask you questions and you become the expert. So that's the nice thing about our curriculum. We have a lot of coders who they don't even know how to teach their own kids. They learn themselves, just don't know how to teach. Homeschoolers. 50% of our students are actually homeschool students, and so it's all self-study. Doesn't require the parent to know anything about programming, as long as they got a Windows Vista. I used to say XP, but you don't want that anymore. Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8 machine, you can run any of this stuff. Visual Studio, it's a pretty complicated environment, especially for a middle school student, so I'm going to compare and contrast between the two. One of the things we do is we start off with covering everything from arrays, for doing looping, if and else statements. We go into variables, all the stuff that you learn in 101 programming in our first book, and then we go into game programming, a little bit of game programming in the first book, and then we go into a lot more game programming. We use some classic games. Most of you are probably familiar with Lunar Lander. This is about 1,000 lines of code here that they will build from scratch. In this one, I'm going to go ahead and run her. So, any of you remember, I'm going to see if I can land the lunar module while at the same time I'm talking, right? How many of you remember doing a lunar lander project when you were in high school, college? Oops, let me turn down the sound here, sorry. A little bit louder. I don't want to hear the thrusters going down. So Lunar Lander is great because it teaches them a lot about game physics. It's a basic game. It's two-dimensional, obviously. Gives them an idea of how to calculate things like collision detection. They'll calculate altitude, lateral movement. You can see it over here. You'll see it live. They're doing their how many feet per second, speed, altitude, lateral movement, and they're basically applying fuel to make sure they land on the lunar module not too fast onto the pad, not too slow. So they get an idea of how to build a game board. They'll get an idea of how to add sound, responding to keyboard, mouse movements, all the basic stuff you learn in a 2D game. This is low tech. It's nothing like some of the games I've seen in here, but you don't want to start middle school or high school or developing 3D games. It's very challenging that way. So this is a C# version of it. As I mentioned earlier, we also do a Java version too. So when they learn Java, they're doing it in JCreator. This is JCreator here. It looks a lot like Visual Studio. Has a lot of the same look and feel to it. Obviously Java, this one's about the same amount of lines of code. How many of you are Java developers? 1, 2. How many are doing JavaScript?
Yeah, a little.
Okay, so C# so far dominating here. Any other languages I haven't talked about? Yes.
C++.
C, C++, yes. I actually started a C++ book for middle schoolers, and I quickly decided this isn't going to work. Even I find it's tough to do C++, but some people are a lot smarter than me, so I leave it at that. Okay, so this is the same program, moon landing. Obviously, it's all written in Java. The nice thing is you get to be able to compare the code between the two versions. So, and as you know, if you compile it one, you can compile it another, they'll all run about the same. Obviously, I think I've already got it going here. Oh yeah, I do right here. This is the Java version right here. Same thing. We teach them all about creating buttons, the forms. We use the Java Swing library because obviously Java, when you start off as a console-based application, you're going to have to use a toolkit. We use the Swing library to do that. This is all in Swing, same thing. They learn the same way. The other thing I want to show you is Small Basic. So in Small Basic, I think I've already shut it down here. Let me pull up Small Basic real quick. So Small Basic, you notice all the buttons on the top, all the toolbars, Visual Studio and JCreator are very complicated. This is Small Basic. Very simplified environment. Whoops. I've gotten to the age I have to wear my glasses all the time now, so I've looked at both screens. Very simple environment. You're looking at open, save as, import, export, run. Not too hard. So kid can't get lost in this. It's nice. It's also, it's touch enabled, very big. I've got a touch screen right here. I do that same moon landing program here in Small Basic. And it's about 1,000 lines of code. So the nice thing about it, it's all color-coded. It's linear too, so you can actually read your code linearly. So there's no forms. It's using .NET background, so you can't see that. But it teaches them how, you'll see there's color coding for each of the different types of commands, controls, etc. It's very English-like, so you can follow your if and else statements structured, which is really nice. In this case, if I go ahead and run this program here, it compiles it live, creates an executable, puts DLLs together, and let's go ahead and start here. And it's a very similar game. The difference is you can do all the same power that you've done in Visual Basic. All those things you can also do in Small Basic. They made it pretty powerful. But it's nice because it's easy for any student to learn. So, nice thing I like about it is it's got IntelliSense. So let's say I'm putting in this end if here, and higher up in the code. Whoops! You notice it's saying, "Hey, Phil, you typed that wrong. End of what? Are you sure you don't want end if or something?" So the nice thing too is if I start typing it, it'll fill it in. I just hit enter and it sticks it in. So for kids who don't have touch typing down yet, you get a lot of shortcuts here. So that's really nice. The debugging in Small Basic is pretty good. So let's take this one right here. I'll just mess this up here. It's already telling me, hey Phil, there's a problem with your code here. You sure you want to type that in? But I'm going to go ahead, yeah, I know what I'm doing, trust me. And then I say, sorry, line 7, count them down to 7. 3 characters over, you got a problem here. So it even tells you where your code's messed up. So, which is really good because how many of you, when you were first programming, spent hours and hours looking for one misspelling in your code? Oh yeah. So they made it simple, they made it fun. So that way students, they can still get troubleshooting. It's got a small, easy debugging environment, but they get to actually see instant gratification. Kids nowadays want instant gratification. When I was young, I'd spend months working on a program before I saw something sometimes working. And so those were back in the days where you get out a book like this, and then you turn to page 2, and you type it all out. Pages and pages of small print. This is a great book, by the way. That's what I started with. Pages and pages, and if you mistype one thing, you wouldn't find it for weeks. So it's a lot better environment nowadays, but they've made it very easy and simple for kids to learn programming. The person who developed it, Vijay Rajeev, was a developer in Microsoft. I approached him when they were coming out with Microsoft Small Basic and said, hey, I'd love to do a curriculum for it. And they said, sure, let's partner up on it. And so we developed 5 books in Microsoft Small Basic, and they liked it so much. If you go out to smallbasic.com, which is Microsoft's website, they've licensed the first 4 chapters of each of our books, and it's part of their tutorial series now. Cool. So the only difference you'll notice is there's no computer Bible games out there, but it has all the secular versions of our curriculum out there, which is great. It's been great partnering with Microsoft on that. So if you're interested in any of those languages, come by and I can give you a little bit more detail about it. One thing I wanted to do too is, just looking at time, I've done this for 34 years. I started off as a kid programming at 13, and so I've seen it, done it all. I've run several small businesses, and so I can answer questions about where do you start programming to all the way to how in the world did you stay in business so long and make money at it still. So I'm an open book, so any questions I'll take from the audience if you have any. So shoot. Yes?
How do you stay in business so long?
I mentioned this to someone yesterday. Early on I learned never take a loan. Never to take funding from anyone. Everything we've done has been self-funded, bootstrapped, and you never lose control of your company. And so that's one of the secrets. Venture capitalists won't like me saying that, but we've never taken any money from anyone. We've grown organically, and we would only use the profits of the company, put it back into the company, but we wouldn't take any money from anyone. So did it all without debt, did it out without losing control of the company, and did it organically. And we just continued investing back in to the company, and it's just been profitable. And we don't go into debt. We don't spend more than we have. In my real life, in my daily life, if I don't have it in my pocket, I don't spend it. So I'm very much interest will eat you up alive, and giving control of your company to someone else will depress you after a while.
But would you crowdfund something right now?
Personally, I would. That's me personally. I've seen other people do it successfully. Over the years, I've developed a lot of friends who are in both secular and Christian software development organizations, and there are pros and cons to all those. I like doing it myself, but that's just a personal opinion. That works for me. So, yes.
My question really was serious.
Oh, okay.
So, being an indie is being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You have created 50 titles.
Me and a couple other people, I guess.
So I'm curious, has your business sustained itself through, there's hits and misses, and just, the hits pay for the misses? Or,
Yes, we've had that.
Also, I'm just kind of wondering, like, maybe you didn't make any money by the first 5, but once you had 5 or 10, whatever the number was, then it started to really steamroll and stuff?
Yeah, the first year, some of our best lessons were learned in the first couple of years. We actually lost a lot of money, and we did it the traditional way. And it was so frustrating. My dad had quit, and so he said, "Nope, I can't do this anymore." I was younger and had more energy, so I kept it going. Yeah, we had misses. We had skunkers. We had things that didn't do well. In fact, every time we made a mistake, we learned from it, which is the best thing you can do. Is you go, okay, that didn't work. Try something else. Try something else. I didn't let my ego get caught up in it. And I had no problem working multiple jobs. So for a while, I did the business all by myself and didn't have to work another job. Other times when it was harsh, I had to go get a job. So you have to feed the family and you got to pay the bills, and I was not wanting to get into debt. Sometimes I put stuff on a shelf for like 3 or 4 years and said, I don't have the time to work on that right now. So it's gone in waves. The nice thing, the wonderful thing is my daughters, I have 3 daughters. I think some of you met my oldest daughter 2 years ago. She came with me 2 years ago here. And they work in the business with me, which is great because they're awesome employees. They're loyal, they're loving. They will work with you until late hours of the night. And so it became a family business, just like my dad and I had it when we started off. I worked with my dad on it. And we never we used contractors all the time, so that way, we didn't have that relationship that gets really painful if you have to break it off because you're not making money as a business. So always did contract relationships to this day. Some people have asked me if I'm hiring, and I'm not in this business just because most of it's contract and it can go in waves. It's also, most of our customers are schools, and so it's very cyclical. So I'll do well from about April all the way to about September-ish, and then it drops like a rock. It just goes crickets. And then Christmas starts coming up, and all these people are wanting to buy stuff for the kids, and so Christmas will be like typical retail spike. It's crazy. And then it goes January, usually about December 26th, just goes into the tank. And so then it builds up. So we basically have done quite a few different channels. We are international now. And so we stepped into international quite a while ago with our digital business, which has been great. Now we sell our books all over. You can go to a bookstore in Japan or in Germany or wherever you want and buy our books. But at a time, way back when we didn't have that, we were digital. And so school years are different in different countries. England, we have 50% of our sales are outside the U.S. And so that helps a lot. It was a big risk we took, but we decided to do that. And we now have distribution centers in England, Germany, Australia, Melbourne, and the U.S. So it's just kind of balancing that way. And the nice thing is, I will tell you, I got out of game development. You can have big hit or misses in game development. The nice thing is when we turned it into a curriculum and started teaching, there are students constantly coming into the school system wanting to learn. There are homeschoolers, parents who want to teach their kids computer programming. They want a self-study curriculum where mom and dad don't know how to program, but they don't know how to teach their kids. They don't want to miss out. And so our entire curriculum is self-study and they can learn at home. And the quality is really good. It's had 30 years of testing and mistakes. And I don't know how many times I've been up late at night when someone gave me a call and said, "How does this work? Why is this doing this?" And I'm like, "Oh, darn, how did I miss that?" So the curriculum is essentially just continue to grow organically. So we have great customer service. We'll email people back their stuff 4 years later. Our database goes back 30 years. So if someone says, "Hey, I bought your curriculum 7 years ago. My computer crashed. I can't find it," we'll send it back out to them. And for us, it's them telling their friends about our customer service. And I've sometimes given away software because I'm not even sure if they bought it from me. But you know what? It's all about customer service. Does that answer your question?
I was still wondering on the take multiple titles?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. When we just had one, no, we've got, I mean, and I'll give you some numbers. When we got up to probably about 30, 45 titles, you know, we were probably doing $5,000 to $7,000 a month in sales. As it grows up to 100, you know, it organically grows from there. The challenge is if you do get a dog, you don't worry about it because then you're working on another one. So you got to have some really good popular titles. The reason why we've done multiple languages, J Sharp. Anybody remember J Sharp?
Yeah.
Okay, one or two of you. So I thought for sure J Sharp was going to take off. You know, Lou Tiley thought it was going to take off. Everybody thought it was going to take off. A lot of time was invested by Lou on J Sharp, and it's now in a shelf up on my bookshelf and nobody wants it. So if you want to learn all about all our stuff in J Sharp, you can learn J Sharp, but it doesn't exist. In fact, Small Basic was a big risk for us. When Microsoft, we were talking to Microsoft about it, they said, you know, we don't know if this is going to go long term. This came out of MSDN Labs, and so it was an experiment for them. And they said, you know, if people buy into it, if they love the concept, you know, we'll keep it going. But if they don't, all your books are not going to be worth much. So are you sure you want to do this? And so I took the risk with them. And it's actually been our second best-selling curriculum for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Right after Java. And actually sells more than C#.
Wow.
So it was a worthwhile investment, but it could have, about 2 years ago, it had a scary time because we weren't sure where it was going to go. But, you know, I'm part of the Small Basic Council at Microsoft, and so I serve on that with the virtual development team that supports Microsoft Small Basic. So bug fixes, you know, future development, I have access to see that. So obviously, you know, I don't share any of that, but it gets pulled into our books and stuff.
But after midnight, you'll share that.
After midnight? No, sorry. Confidentiality agreements, all that fun stuff. You know. That's another important thing is if you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you make a promise, you keep it, even if it hurts, even if it's painful. You know, the business partner on the other side sees that and says, no, it didn't work out this time, but they remember you the next time, and so they'll come back. And in all my business dealings, I use biblical principles. I'm obviously a Christian, and everything I do is to the glory of God. And so, you know, I made a decision long ago that, you know, my curriculum, you can see, it's very public on our websites that I have a Christian version, a secular version. But I was convicted that if I didn't lift up Jesus Christ, it wasn't going to be successful. So. Other questions? I'll take questions from younger guys, or older guys.
Well, I was fascinated by your numbers about, I've seen all this emphasis on STEM education.
Yeah.
You've got this itty bitty number of coders. What's going on?
So it's funny, STEM education just in the last 3 or 4 years, like take State of Washington where I live. It wasn't until this last year that they actually took it seriously. It wasn't required. It's talked about a lot, but now I think 17, 18 states are now requiring a computer class to graduate.
That's
it
good.
could be Word, it could be Excel, it could be PowerPoint. So some of the problem is we've lost a lot of people who can teach programming. So Microsoft has got something called TEALS, where they're partnering with businesses and saying, hey, would you like to teach a class in a school and have your developers teach in class? And they provide all the curriculum and stuff. So it's called TEALS. I participate in TEALS. Annually they have a conference. They bring in 700 high school students from Pacific Northwest area, and we spend a day with kids and teaching them how to code and stuff. And I have a curriculum booth that they allow me to partner with them, which is really great. But technology is only a part of that, and so STEM is science, math, obviously technology, but most of it emphasis is in the sciences and the math. Code.org, great organization. 2 years ago they released this video, probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Actually, it's only been a year. Now I think about it, it's only been a year, and it went viral. And you know, they had kind of Code Day back in October. And our sales of our products went up 10x just because of that video. So people are getting interested in it. So we partner a lot with big organizations when they're doing pushes like that. And it's an opportunity to get in front of kids and stuff. If we can, they'll take it.
Why? Because like you said it yourself, like back when you and I were coming up through high school, this was a big deal. Like, so why did it disappear?
You know, I actually have a theory. How many of you remember going from Windows 98 to Windows NT ME? Any of you old enough for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember BASIC disappeared? So you used to have BASIC built into the operating system. It was there. It was free. It was there. It disappeared. Visual Basic came out, and how many kids had hundreds of dollars to spend on Visual Basic? I bought Visual Basic 1.0, and it was expensive for me, and I was making money. And so when they took Basic out, the free tool disappeared, and so then all the people who taught Basic, they'd gone on Visual Basic, Visual C#, Java hadn't yet started taking off C, C++. How many did Turbo C? Remember Turbo C?
Mm-hmm. Orland, Turbo
so
C.
There was no free language built in, so there's nothing for people to start, make mistakes, and do it for free. So fast forward, Microsoft Inside, VJ said, you know what? There's an article that was written called Johnny Can't Code, and it was all basically talking about why this whole generation of kids don't know how to code, because there's just no tools on here that come with it. And so he developed Microsoft Small Basic, decided to release it free, and that's how it came out of MSDN Labs. So it's now free. Microsoft has also since made Visual Studio for free, so Express, the Visual Studio Express version. So if you were around in 2005 when Express launched, they were competing with Java, which was free. And so Java, I don't know if you remember, but the advanced placement exam for computer science was actually written in C before it was in Java. And so when Java came out, it was free. Education, academic world can get it for free. It just took off. And so Microsoft learned from that. Of course, Visual Studio Express is free. And now DreamSpark, if you're a student, you can get DreamSpark for free, which is almost all their tools for free, as long as you're not developing it commercially. Pardon me?
There's Unity.
Oh, funny you should mention that. I'll go back to my presentation right here. So then there's, of course, Unity. So let me put this back in here. Unity, a wonderful environment. I don't know how many of you have heard of or understand what XNA is, Microsoft's XNA. So XNA is dying.
Yes.
So Microsoft is no longer going to be supporting it. They have embraced Unity. So if you go to Microsoft now, it's all about Unity. They purchased just July 2nd. They purchased. Anybody ever use Unity VS? Unity VS from Syntax Tree. It's a plugin, allows Visual Studio and Unity to work together. They purchased that company, and they're now investing in it. In fact, Charlie, where are you? There you are. Charlie was telling me that he went to a class over at Microsoft, and it was on Unity.
Yep.
And so I think did they show off VS there at all?
They talked just a little bit about it, and I remember now vaguely that they said something was happening, but they didn't talk too much about it.
Yeah, so they announced that they purchased the company, and the nice thing is they're going to take their toolkit, which was I think $249, and make it free. And so you'll be able to plug into Visual Studio Express for free, plug in the VS, the Unity VS, and then you'll install Unity, and you can troubleshoot it and do all the work you want to do inside using C#, Visual C#, inside Visual Studio with Unity. So that got announced on July 2nd, so that's probably old. Well, I guess it's new news for some of you guys. Unity VS, if you guys don't know much about it, you basically don't. I'm a Visual Studio guy, so I don't have to read my favorite environment to debug my scripts. So just hit F5. Debugging obviously all happens inside Visual Studio, and you just connect the debuggers to Unity, and then the scripts that you can do breakpoints, you can spec, modify variables, arguments, all that fun stuff. And then you can use snippets, wizards, tools, all that stuff. Microsoft has taken if you go out to Visual Studio, Unity VS right now, you can't download it. They're fixing up the code, putting it in Microsoft standards, and they're going to re-release it for free. So if you're sure about a month from now, you can probably be out there again. But yes, and then people who use Unity, Syntax, Unity VS from Syntax, obviously Microsoft obviously did too. Valve, Disney, Square, Ubisoft, I mean, you know most of these big companies, they're using Visual Studio, Visual C#, and they're using that plugin. So I won't go into an advertisement here about my products, so I'll skip that part. But we have thousands of students. We've been doing this for so many years. I get emails from adults now who did our books 20 years ago, and they're professional developers working at very large companies. And they started off as a kid learning computer programming. Those actually are what keeps me motivated. I enjoy that more than anything else, is getting emails from kids who said, one of them started his own game company. He does a whole bunch of stuff with robotics, but at Legos Robotics, he's a toolkit for it. He's very successful at it right now. It's like, he started with our Java for Kids books. So really cool to see that. Awesome. Other questions?
34 years was the most surprising game that somebody made off your books they told you about.
It's kind of funny. Every so often I'll see something and I'll go, wow, that looks so familiar. And so I'll go into our database and look up the author and I go, oh, he took our tutorial. We actually, I should mention, all of our code, we open it up to you guys. We encourage the students to reuse it. If I see apps come out that look like mine, I'm complimenting. If they use half my code, I'm complimenting. Lou is complimenting. We're not hurt, but we open it all up for them to learn it. I think the cool, wow, so many stories. You know, there's a guy, it's his testimonials on our website, but he went off in his MIT grad now, very successful. He's got his own company. I'll remember his product in a minute. I remember the stories, but never the products. There's so many products. If you come over, I'll look in my database and I can tell you about some of them. The cool ones are obviously people who've gone to Microsoft, they've gone to Valve, they've gone to Facebook, you know, and they're working on big, huge, gigantic products. One thing I want to point out too is my goal is not to teach gaming. I love playing games. I started off as a game developer, but most of my money was not made in game programming. And so the reason why I teach C#, Java, Visual Basic, I want students to learn a language that can be used in any field. So, you know, Visual Basic, a lot of business applications are written in Visual Basic. A lot of applications written in Java. I think it's like 3 billion devices on the world. Your phone, half your phones in this room are probably running on Java if you're running Droids. Those are skills that can be used in any industry. So if your game's not doing well, you know, there were times where I didn't do any game development for years, and it was my skills as a programmer can use as something else. The one thing I did too is I got a degree. My minor was in business administration, which is a very smart thing to do, because if you're a good game programmer and you have no business skills, you will get ripped off. And so you want to understand business, you want to understand how to make money, you want to understand how to manage your money, you want to understand how to run your own checkbook, you want to run your own financial systems, you want to be able to run your own P&L, you want to understand how to report your financials to other people so, you know, they aren't worried about your business, especially when you're selling into some of the companies I sell into. I do my own taxes. I do all that because I learned all the business side myself in school. And it was great because I don't have to hire an accountant. I don't have to hire, you know, a tax person. I save all that money. It goes right back into the business. And I learned so much. I've had more fun automating that kind of stuff. We wrote a checkbook management system. One of the first things we did before Quicken even came out. Not no one would buy it. We sold it actually to churches because, you know, it was a financial system for churches just back in the 80s. So once you learn the business side of it, you know, you can make a lot better decisions because you know how to take a product, monetize it, and then how to invest it back into your business, and you don't have to rely on someone else to do that for you.
So if I hear you right, you're saying that these other programmings either facilitate, protect, or get you between gaming.
Yes. Yeah, if you learn Visual C# or Visual Basic or Java, you know, that skill can be used in any environment. For me, I've worked in aerospace, truck manufacturing. I'll name a company, Packard. I work for Kenworth Truck Company. I work at Safeco Life Insurance, Safeco Insurance Companies, financial services. I've worked in aerospace. None of it mattered that I was a programmer. I was skilled. I had a language that was needed, and it didn't matter if I did game programming or whatever I did. So it was a language that I learned how to do business applications. That was the nice thing about the business part of my degree is I learned, oh, wow, you got a lot of numbers to crunch. Oh, okay, what's the best way to do that? And so I use those skills, transfer them back and forth all the time. And game programming, I mean, if you look at the industry, there are a lot of people who've done really well. There's a lot of people who've lost a lot of money. You know, you can have a great hit, or you can have a real skunker. But you know, if you learn a skill that you can transfer, you know, Unity is a great engine. You're not going to find a lot of business apps running Unity, but a lot of business apps will be running C#, Java, and Visual Basic. And by the way, there are very successful game companies in here, and I applaud you guys. It's been great watching you guys. I no longer develop games anymore, but it's fun watching people do that. And I love playing the games. I've bought quite a few of people's games in here. Any other questions? Anything from you younger guys? Some of you already came by, or younger ladies.
What are you talking about? I'm not at the women's retreat. I'm totally a man. Meat and beer.
Well, I appreciate all your time. I'm over at my booth anytime you want to drop by. I'm doing a special discount here for folks here. We have a digital version too, so books, they're expensive to print because they're all in color. But if you got an iPad, you've got a Kindle or stuff, and you're very comfortable working in PDF and alt tabbing, cut and paste out of our books. So saves on typing too if you want to do that. So we also have a lower cost digital version too. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And you guys have a good evening. I'll probably be joining you in the rest of this.
Thank you.